Hi, welcome back. I am Ashish. In this tutorial, I am going to demonstrate SQL Server 2016's one of the important concept, that is session context. So session context allow us to share the session state among different database objects such as in stored procedures, triggers, functions and other objects. So if you have ever worked with any ASP.NET application, then you can easily relate this concept with the ASP.NET Session State Management. In ASP.NET Session State Management, we can store any data or object inside the session using a string key, and then later we can retrieve that key back and use inside the application by typecasting in appropriate type. So this concept of session state is closely related with the ASP.NET Session State Management. So data stored inside the session context can be accessed inside the stored procedure, functions and triggers. Session context can only be used within the lifetime of the single SQL connection. That is, if we store a data inside one SQL connection inside session context, then that data cannot be used inside another SQL connection. Data that we store inside the session context does not store inside any table in SQL Server database. Instead, it is stored in the server's memory. And finally, session context store values as SQL variant, means we can store different type of values inside the session context, and when we retrieve data back from the session context, then we have to typecast in the appropriate type. Let's consider an example. Suppose we have stored any data inside the session context inside the stored procedure 1, then that data will be stored in the server memory, and that memory will be referred by a key. We can later use same session context inside the another stored procedure, inside function and inside trigger. Session context data will be accessed within the same SQL connection. So let's see how we can use session context. Using session context in SQL Server is very easy. SQL Server provides SP set session context stored procedure, by using which we can store data inside SQL Server in session context. SP set session context stored procedure takes two parameters. One is key of type string and another is value that we want to store inside the session context. We can also specify whether the value stored inside the session context can be overridden by any another instance or not, by passing the read only equal to 1. If we specify read only equal to 1, then the value stored inside the session context cannot be overridden by any other instance. Getting the value from the session context is also easy. SQL Server provides session context function, by using which we can get the value stored inside the session context. In session context function, we need to pass the key which is pointing to the data stored in the session context. So let's see session context demo in SQL Server 2016.